Let me go to the channel. So we have in our Discord an office hours channel, and some questions have rolled in there. And the last couple of times we accepted callers for calling in. I know Tom has a couple of questions, particularly for you, Mattia. I did want to show something off real quick, though, before, I guess we can theoretically let more people roll in. So while that's happening, let me see how to share my window over here. Share screen, window, effect Atom, examples. Okay, here we go. So I think briefly somebody had a question about effect Atom last time, and I wanted to explore effect Atom more, which is a lovely library made by the great Tim Smart. Effect Atoms / Atom React. You can npm bun install that stuff. And basically it's what is it? It's a reactive state tool that has bindings to React. And so you can use it instead of use query. You can use it instead of, I don't know, Zustand or Redux or whatever. It solves a few problems. It's basically, I believe it's heavily inspired by Jotai. Ethan Nizer made a video about it, which is very good. I would recommend watching that. But I made, to understand things, I make little demos of them. So you can see that, there's a counter. Oh, my God. That's sort of the standard example of all React apps. And you can see how this works is that you sort of make this thing called an atom. You give it an initial value, and then you can call use atom on it, and it will give you these sort of React hook accessors for getting the current value and for updating the value, which is kind of nice. So really, an atom rather at its core is just like it's a variable, except it's reactive, which means that it's a reactive box. So when you set it, anyone who cares will be notified that it's changed. And of course, that's what this use atom hook does under the hood. When you call set count, it will redraw the view, mark it as dirty, and validate it, whatever the right React terminology is there. And it's cool. I really like the API, which I believe is inspired by Jotai, because you have this optional get parameter. You can give it a sort of the initial state, this 0 thing, and it can go up and down. And notice that the second box is the derived doubled count from the first thing, so 10, 20, etc.
And it's always up to time. And it's always correct. It's always reactive, always updated without having to manually trigger that.
Exactly. Oh, the sound effects are coming through. That's good. Sound effects, I've learned, make all the difference. You can't always get away with them for apps, but if you can, slobber them on everything. So the count is the underlying state, and then the way that you derive an atom is by passing it instead a function, and its first argument is this context, which you can also call as a function, and you can get the value of another atom. So I can basically get the current state of count, but it does two things. It'll when double count is evaluated, it will get the current value of the count atom, which at this point is 11, and then multiply it by 2. And so the result of this double count atom will be the result of the current count atom times 2. But it also creates this reactive dependency such that double count knows that it now depends on count atom. By calling get on another atom, not only do you get its value, but you sort of register yourself as a listener to that value so that it always stays up in sync. And then you, in this case, use the atom's value for the double count, which is kind of nice. I'll quickly just go through a couple other things because I made a bunch of little examples.
I love the really big effect word.
Yeah. A little bit of subliminal marketing here. This is literally the same thing, except now we have 2 base atoms and then one that sort of derives from 2 atom dependencies, just by calling get on both of them. And it'll update when either one changes. And you can see a very subtle flash effect when the value changes. And then what's really cool about it, about effect atom, is the last thing I'll say. I'll just spend 2 more minutes on this, is so here we have this count atom, same as before, goes up and down. But we also have this dice atom, which it calls make again, but this time, instead of just returning a pure derived function like multiplying it by 2, you can actually have an effect in here. So every time this count changes, or the first time, whatever, if it's seeded with a value, it will execute this effect with the current count, which generates a certain number of dice rolls and aggregates them. And it adds a sleep in there too, just to show that it can be an asynchronous operation, like any effectful thing. And you can sort of match on its state, whether or not it's never executed before, if it failed, or if it succeeded. And then if it did succeed, is it currently waiting for a result or not? So it's a really nice way of writing programs. Here's the same thing with a little weather picker, and this is actually making fetch requests to this open media API thing. And yeah, there's some more in here if you want to check it out. I'll post the link in the Discord channel. Hello, this is cool, and yeah, we can mark some stuff and delete some stuff. Last cool thing about this is that this uses an effect service, sort of an in-memory to-do service, where you can create, list, toggle, and delete these to-dos, and then you can create a runtime that is sort of seeded with a particular implementation of a service. I don't need a merge all here. I don't know why I did that. And then instead of calling atom.make, you call whatever the runtime is .atom, and then you can use a particular service, and it'll pluck whatever you provided to the runtime out of that and call that. So it'll call the list method and get all the to-dos and whatever. So you can look at this code. It's pretty short, and it deals with so-called reactivity keys, so that when you create or modify a to-do, an individual to-do, it'll know to refetch the full atom list. Yeah, there's docs on the Effect Atom GitHub page, but this is kind of, docs by example. So if you want to play around with this or critique it, or let me know if I can add any other cool examples, this is just kind of a way I was learning about Effect Atom, and I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy with Effect Atom, not necessarily what I've done, but I'll share the link.
Also,
okay,
a couple of things that are really great also about Effect Atom that they were added just recently, but they are really, really crazy and amazing, is the support for HTTP API and like the Effector PC, so that you can get basically like an interactive query client for RPC or HTTP APIs purely based on Effect Atom, which is amazing.
Yes, I did play around with that too, and I should add an example for that because it's very good. You just get so much for free. It's very good. Cool. Yeah. Well, that's that. Feel free to add any other thoughts when you're done with your sandwiches, Maxwell. We'll let you. You get one free Effect Atom comment when you come back to us. Okay. Cool. Well, that's that. Let us take some questions, because that's kind of the purpose of the office hours, to do a little show and tell and also to ask questions. I see Tom is calling in, longtime caller and listener. Let's bring you on.
Hello, Internet people.
Hello, Tom.
Hello.
Cool. So first of all, those demos are incredibly useful, and I wish that you had showed me all that stuff when I thought I hated Effect a while back, because I would have been like, I don't know, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I think just being able to dive in and start screwing around with something is what my monkey brain needs in order to be like, oh, I hit button and it do thing. Oh, cool.
I've shown you. Have you seen the other visual effect things I made a while ago?
I saw it on Twitter and then it's gone forever. Where did it go? How do I find it?
It got deleted. It's gone.
Come on.
No, here, I'll post it in the chat. It's still there. I need to open source it and add more examples. Please. But yes, there you go.
My family is starving.
Here, feed them some effect examples to sucker their hunger. Okay.
Excellent, cool. So my real question is, so I went through the full emotional roller coaster of, denial and, whatever. I finally gave up. Fine, I'll use effect. It sucks, but I'll use it, whatever. And then after I get in here, it's just like, it solves 10 times more of the problems that I'm actually dealing with in my real life than I was aware of. And it wasn't like selling me on this. I'm just like, typed errors, great. I'm like, cool. And something about stuff you need to be there, and like neat, I guess I'll figure that out. But like after I get in here, I find out about the LSP and the ESLint plugin that like you right click and it magically just like rewrites that. Dude. And then then there's a DevTools thing, and there's a VS Code plugin that hooks into that, and it's like, okay, like there's so much more here than I am aware of. I don't know how to use any of this stuff. I don't know what it is capable of. And so that's my question. How do I use all this stuff? And what even is there? And like, what should I be doing that I'm not doing? Also, how does it tie into all the stuff the tracing stuff of just like I can do, effect.fun and then give it a name and then give it a function star, yada, yada. But then it has a name, and then I can see that in the tracing stuff later. And then it shows up in the DevTools, and it shows up in my production logs, Datadog shenanigans, and all that stuff. Like, what else should I be knowing about that I don't know about? That's my question, and now I'll go off video. Goodbye.
Well, thank you for that wonderful series of questions and passion and emotional journey. But I think that lands pretty much in your court, Mattia. Do you want to sort of take it from there?
So, sure. So, as you mentioned, there are like a lot of like different things in the effect ecosystem that tries to improve the overall experience while using effect. As you mentioned, we have an LSP, we have a VS Code extension, we have an ESLint package, we have a lot of things. So how do one should move between all of those things? So sure, the first thing is as was mentioned, the Effect LSP extension, which is basically a way for us to improve the effect experience by basically wiring into the editor experience. So basically, the Effect LSP is a plugin that allows you to get custom diagnostics that are tied into effect, or things like refactors, as Kit showed last time, that are very, very, very effect specifics, or experience like auto-completion that are very, very effect specific. And you can, maybe I should just show quickly like my screen just to show you. Give me a second.
Yeah, that would be great. A couple of, I'm not sure if my chat is working here. I'm trying to respond in the chat, but some people asked some questions real quick that I'll get to while you're sharing. One is it open source? The thing I showed, it's not yet open sourced. I swear I will open source everything, all the visual things, very soon. And then I'll post about it on the Discord or mention it here in a week or two. And then somebody asked where to put questions. You can drop them in the chat, or you can call in. If you preferably, if you feel like calling in, following Tom's wonderful example. No pressure, but that's fun. It's a little easier to ask follow-ups and keep track of it, because sometimes if we get a bunch of textual questions, they go off the edge of the screen, whereas call-ins are sort of naturally queued. And it's fun and exhilarating. But also, I see your questions, Morgan, and if you don't feel like calling in, I'll get to that one afterwards.
Okay, so just wanted to show really quickly a couple of things. I don't want to get into these things for hours, but because I could be spending here hours, but I won't. And basically just letting you know that under the effect namespace, you will find also the language service, as was linked last time. And there are pretty much the install instruction, which are very, very easy. You just have to install the package, plug in some additional lines into your TS config, and ensure, based on your editors, some things that basically allows the editor to load the plugin. And all of the things that you get there are quite a few. And as I mentioned before, they are things like diagnostics, or they are things like completions, refactors, or other miscellaneous experience. The things that, for example, you get when you are browsing your effect code, maybe I should increase a bit the font. Is it readable now? Yes, seems like so.
That's pretty good to me, but yeah, let us know in the chat if you want it even bigger.
And some pretty nice. Okay.
Can we get one more bump for the chat?
Oh yeah, sure. Get me another more. Okay, maybe too much.
Okay, yeah, now we're claustrophobic. That's perfect.
Okay. Okay, so it gave you some useful things that are not just refactors or diagnostics, but are, for example, like this stuff. You can hover things and see the effect type parameters cleanly shaped. Because we know that sometimes when you have a lot of errors in your types, that gets insanely long, or you get also things like, for example, as we have shown last time, if we have a layer, you can see a description that describes your layer, and they were asking, is that the thing that does the visual representation of my layer? Yes, it is this one, because then you can click and you can basically see pretty much a basic chart that shows you some things and allows you basically to understand how you are getting things inside of your layers. Because, for example, why does my application requires a database connection? Then you go down and see, oh, it is required by the default cache, which is required by this layer, which is the user repository. And if we go back to our code and look at it, we will see that indeed the user repository has requirements on the database connection. So it's trying kind of like a way to help the user understand what's happening on. And also yeah, I see people reacting. What did I see?
Their minds are being blown. I want to, we should, everyone imagine some exploding sounds. The Tim and Eric GIF. I did actually have one question about that. Not to attack you. I'm going to be vicious. Can you bring up the layer graph again?
Yeah.
The full one. Yeah. Because, so one thing, I don't see it. There it is. Cool.
Yes.
So one thing, I'm just trying to think of like alternative ways of doing this, because, and maybe this is, because each box represents one of the chained provide methods, right?
Yes. It's basically one of the member that contributes.
Another way I could imagine viewing it is sort of just like because generally you chain a bunch of provides and merges as a group. And I don't know if I always care about the individual like provide or merge calls so much as the full picture, if that makes sense, of the fully composed layer graph of that like sort of chain or sequence of provide merges, where it might be nice to see that, well, the DB connection, or rather, sort of at the layer of layers, at the layer of layers. I can't think of a better way to say that. Does that kind of make sense? As an alternative, I might need to like graph something. I'm not sure if that's even possible or if I'm even coherent is what I'm gesturing toward.
We could try something. The thing is that layers having also the possibility of requiring layers that are themselves, sometimes, that can like lead into strange ways of trying to display them. And that's one thing that one should try. But yeah, I think this is like my mind of how I imagine layer works, as blocks that stagger, one of a layers that stays one over the other. And as you put a layer one on top of the other, some things pass in, some things stay there, that's my way of reasoning layers. But the one you mentioned, again, DevTools is one thing that if someone have like some idea, something that I would like to see, that I'm always open to hearing, because everyone with DevTools have their way to think about things, because we are all different. So we think about the same concept in
some
different
think
ways.
about it the right way, some people think about it the wrong way, and no, just
Well, there is no right and wrong. It's mostly like our brain like works in different ways. Yeah, so everyone have
totally.
its own way like to figure. But yeah, what you mentioned,
I like this way, and I see that there are some challenges. I think I played around with this a while ago, and yeah, what you say is it's weird, because really all the layers are, even the named layers might involve merging at some point. I guess if it is that continuous block, I sort of see like the layer provide merge in that. Could you go back to the code real quick? Actually, I'm sorry for mind controlling you. But like, on line 22, like those on lines 22 and 23, for instance, or this whole block, like what I really care about are like the named layers, and these sort of intermediate stages at this level. I kind of want them to be de-aliased, right? I care about like I really only want to see the user repository, the cache default, and the DB connection default. But I'm not sure, but it's kind of tricky. Like, how do you only could you only keep the named layers? And then, I don't know.
Yeah, it needs to play it out, because again, there are also like layers that doesn't have any requirements, or they don't provide anything, but they actually contributes to the things. For example, like setting like things like telemetry or the logger or whatever, like they contribute, but they are not like tied to any other dependency. So
Totally.
yeah, so I'll play around with that. That's a nice thing.
No pressure. I like what you've done. I like what you've done, and I shouldn't have taken us on that tangent, but I was really curious. I couldn't help myself. So I'll let you continue showing off. You were blowing people's minds at too fast a rate, so I needed to sort of let them recover.
And so also, like as you mentioned, like I know that people also like maybe love like a textual representation, because they just want like a question answered. And then that's why also like there is here a comment that says, oh, there is a user repository in your layer. Why is that? And because at this line, at this column, there is like user repository. Or also the opposite question, why is a database connection required? Oh, it is required because the user repository requires it. So it's kind of replying to the same question, but in a textual manner, which is some people prefer to just hover and see, oh, DB connection, oh, the user repository, right, without having to go to the visual representation, whatever. So yeah, for some people, it works best like that way. And also other things that, for example, the LSP provides are, let's say that I have a sync function. So I have export sync function, get user by a name. Let's say that I have maybe a more complex function, something like const, I don't know, user name, and I'll pick something like await, get username. Let's say that this returns a promise. That's not true, but let's say that this returns a promise. And then I do other stuff. There are also refactors in the LSP that I can right-click refactor, and I get for free things like I want to rewrite my async await function into an effect. And do you want an effect.fn or an effect.gen? Also, do you want to have typed failures or not? Or maybe you just want to die and that's it, because you don't know yet about what are the possible failures of your code. So you can just say rewrite to effect.gen with failures, and then you'll need just to add the import, and that's it. Yeah. What did I break? Yeah, I was always, I know what I break. I need actually something that returns a promise, because that's not a promise, so it's complaining because that's not a promise. Yeah, let me, sorry, just give me 1 second that I can create a very quick sync function. Let's say that I have await, new promise, and say sol and some, yeah, that's fine by me. Yeah, okay. And now I can do refactor, rewrite to gen with failures, and again I import data, and that's it. Basically now I have my working effect, which is typed, and I also get automatically my error, which has been stubbed for me. And this is basically a default error, and then later on I can say, okay, this error tries to get username error. And as you can see, now you get something better. But also, maybe you didn't notice that other like very simple things like this is error 1, the tag of the error contains error 1, so usually when that happens means that I want them to keep in line. So the LSP, for example, when I say I want to rename this symbol and use the error again, you can see that it also updates like the tag. These are very, very, very simple things, but I know that some people fall in love for that. And
That's beautiful. That's a wonderful amount of detail. You could tell a lot of love went into this. That's really, really nice. Can you scroll to the right, because we don't see where user error is being used, I don't think.
Oh yeah, sorry, you're right.
No worries. It got multi-lined.
Yeah, I don't have. Yeah, there it is.
Cool. That's so
basically,
cool. That's great.
It's using try promise to wrap the promise I wrote before. You can imagine here your code writing, calling APIs or whatever, and then it automatically stops for you that error. And so you can imagine if you have an existing code base that uses async await, maybe this can help a lot trying to move away from async await and slowly adopt it effect. And there are also other things, like, for example, people usually have stuff. Let's say that I have now, I just want to show another thing before. Yeah, I just also wanted to show that when I rewrite this async await function, as I showed before, I have also other variants, like, for example, I can get the effect.fn version, and the effect.fn version automatically, for example, infers the name of the span from the name of the function you had before, or things like that. And also, the LSP helps you with other things. For example, one thing that I always like get stuck with is I don't remember the syntax for effect.service. Every time I don't remember where I am supposed to put the self type parameter or the tag or whatever. Out of my memory, I never remember. So one thing you can do, you can say if you are writing something like export class and you get like my service extends effect dot, and you can see now that you have basically additional completion. And then based on what you want, do you want a service? You press enter and you get stubbed out the reference to self, and also you get the tag created for you, and then you can focus on building like your things. And
beautiful.
There are also not just helpings like completion or refactoring, but are also things like diagnostics, which are really, really, really nice. So let's say that you have things like you have this function, and this function, at some point of this function, you call effect.log. Oops, sorry. Effect.log, and you say hello. And as you can see, I get squiggles because effect must be yielded or assigned to a variable. So this is basically preventing me for losing hours and saying, why doesn't it log that? Yeah, because it needs to be yielded.
Yeah, that is probably the number one error people just commit all over the place.
Yes. And also things like, there are also things like that tries to teach you how to better use effect. For example, here I have yield star, and then maybe instead of effect.log, I could maybe effect.fail user not found. And you'll see that indeed I still have a squiggle. Why? If you look at that, we are trying to teach. It is recommended that you use return yield star for effects that never succeed or signal a definitive exit point for type narrowing. So that means that basically right now TypeScript is not able to understand that after this point the execution has failed. So it would never reach that. There is no way that it will reach this because we have yielded something that never succeeds. So what the LSP is suggesting is something to just return. And now you can see that it's grayed out because indeed that will be never called. So it's trying to help you saying, okay, you can do that and that will improve your things.
Yeah, and that also improves type inference as well. I think I saw a question about that the other day, because now the type of get username by ID has as its return never, which is a subtype of anything, and yay.
And also, I wanted to show just a couple things that, since people got like so into the effect identifiers thing last time, they wanted like to ensure that the effect identifier string is unique, it's not wrong or whatever. Why don't we use classes? Why don't we use symbols?
It wasn't just last time. Every time the identifiers
come every up. Time we speak about services, what if they aren't unique? What if whatever? So the LSP has also, like, let's say that I start by saying again export class user service extends effect.service user service. Let's just say succeed and say value 1 just to have a service. You can see that now by default the autocompletion has basically this pattern that is deterministic, which is like the package name, the subfolder, and file name, and finally the service name. So in that way you have guaranteed a unique name because that is deterministic, and that is a pattern that there is no way that you have two identical files with the same identifier being exported or whatever. So that helps for that thing. And you can also enable, this is off by default because maybe you don't want patterns like this, but there is also like, let's say that I put there user service, but instead I wanted like another one. There is the ability to configure in the plugins. There are a lot of options that are listed into the README, and you can do things like change the severity of the diagnostics. So you can say diagnostics severity, and then you can look up into the list of the repo the values like diagnostic and say, for example, deterministic key, I want them to error. And now if I go back to my code and reload my editor, we should ideally see that we get squiggles because now it enforces that pattern we have before. So for those of you that were complaining about that, now it's an option, now it works. And this basically is a lot of things that are inside of the editor, and that's basically the LSP stuff. But the other things that got mentioned are, for example, the VS Code extension. And while the LSP, someone asked, I think, can the LSP give this information to an AI? Yes, if you use some AIs that are LSP aware, for example, OpenCode, I think, is LSP aware, you get those diagnostics also fed into your AI, so that's fine. And now you also have the ability that's listed in it's listed how to do that into the repository of the language service. Yes. And you also have the ability basically to patch your local installation of TypeScript so that you can basically get also those diagnostics when TSC is run. And that is really helpful for the AIs, because in that way, when they try to compile and see if there are type errors, they say, okay, I know that there are those diagnostics. And last thing, and so last thing I want to show is some feature of instead the VS Code extension. Why the LSP tries to improve the editor experience. So it's a very, very short feedback, because it's while you type your code or while you let your AI friend type your code. The VS Code extension instead is more for debugging stuff. It's more like there is something that's not going how I would like to. Why? And the effect VS Code extension gives you things like, for example, let's say that I run this sample code, and and now you get inside of your editor these additional panels, and these additional panels do few very interesting things. So we have the effect span stack, because we know effect has its own fiber runtime. So the traditional call stack you have here is not useful in any way. Unfortunately, I just resized the screen. I cannot show. But you can see that most of the things are like internals of effect that you don't care about. And so you have this span stack that basically tries to fill the gap, and you can then click and it will bring you to the location. For example, we can see that in order to reach our breakpoint in here, we have stumbled upon the invocation of the internal span, and then we have the get username by ID function that got invoked. Where did it get invoked? Into our index.ts. And so basically that helps trying to reach that one. And also another thing that is very interesting as useful and also useful is the ability to basically see all of the fibers that are running into your program. Because you may have like things like, I don't know, a fiber that is going wild and it's not interrupting for some reason. And in here, you'll see that you have basically all of your fibers that are in there. And you'll see basically some information about the fibers, which span they are running, if they are interruptible or not. So you can see if you are trying to interrupt something that's not interruptible, you will have a very bad time. And this tries to help with that too. And there are also things like post debug on defects. So if you have defects that are thrown in your application, you can say, please pause when one defect is detected. And that basically make it so, let me just run again. And you can see that now my application reached the defect, and the defect is user not found, and it has stopped. It has bringed me where it is being like issued, and it shows me, okay, this is the defect, user not found. And lastly, you have things like seeing the current context, which is really useful sometimes. And also the last thing is we have basically an embedded tracer. Let me just remove these lines, because otherwise we won't have an application running. Yes, let me make the effect repeat 10 times will be enough. We have the effect tracer in here, and the effect tracer basically allows us to do things like, let's say that we start our application and we break immediately. Okay, and now you can go to the effect DevTools, and one time, once it was used to work over a WebSocket, now it doesn't. We need the WebSocket anymore. Now we can use just the debug connection. So you can attach the debug connection, and you can then immediately have things like, okay, now if I had my application run, you'll see that I will see in real time the spans of what happened in my editor, and you can see that those are in real time. So they have the benefit that instead things like telemetry, until the telemetry is sent, you don't get data. Instead, here you get them immediately.
Well, that's very cool. Incredibly cool. What have we not? I mean, I think we covered some of the basics, right? You have all the sort of inline diagnostics and type info hints. Really cleverly done too, because it's apparently there are clearly limitations to what can show up. So you need to use a mixture of, you could basically like show code snippets and they get syntax highlighted. So you use type aliases and doc strings, which is a fun way of doing it. It's a clever workaround to sort of their limitation. And then of course links to mermaid charts. And then the autocomplete and the sort of the most of it's the LSP that we looked at, and right now we're just sort of looking at the plugin for VS Code in particular.
Yes.
Some people were confused, so yeah, definitely download the LSP, no matter what you're using as your editor, and then also.
The LSP is a protocol, so it is supported by most of the editors. So Vim and Vim, VS Code, that, whatever you can think of, usually supports an LSP. Some editors have a limited version of the LSP, like I think of IntelliJ just supports diagnostics and few things, auto-completion. But yeah, most of the editors have a pretty much like very, very good support for the LSP protocol.
Cool. I know. On the first episode, I kind of stumbled through the layer generation example. Do you happen to have a file for that in your hopeful test?
We could try into this one. Let me just toggle off this diagnostic, because otherwise I will be mad by seeing that. Let me. I can. Don't know why I'm not using the whole screen. So yeah. So let's say that I want. Okay, let's say that I have all of these services implemented somewhere in my application. And now at the edge of my program, I want basically to compose them and create a layer that has all of them, right? So usually what you would have to do, as Kit showed last time, is basically to manually build your tree of dependencies. But instead, what you can do is say something like a live layer equals, you can put into an array all of the layers you want to include. So for example, db connection dot default, cache dot default, user repository, and say also like file system dot default. And once you have put all of them in an array, what you do is right click and say refactor, prepare layers for automatic composition. And it will basically automatically type for you the first time all of the things that you could potentially get from there. You can then decide, I don't care about the DB connection, its level. I don't want to have the repository. I just want to have the cache and the user repository. And then once you have done that, what you can do is basically, just as before, right click, factors, and compose layer automatically. And what you will get is basically an automatic composition of them. And we can see that indeed our final layer will have just what we asked. And then if we have changed the idea, we can trigger again the refactor and prepare again for automatic composition. You will see that the previously provided one will be already there. The other one are on a comment. So I could say, okay, I want to keep the reconnection. Yeah, sorry, I'm fighting with my editor because I forgot to set up, the automatic formatting. But yeah, and then compose layers, and then format document. Yeah, I don't have a format layer. Yeah. And then
Zetos 33. I was just going to say that Zetos 3301 did colon uppercase O, which makes a very wide-mouthed, agape mouthed face of shock, which I agree with. I totally, very cool, incredibly cool. I made that same face on the stream when I was mucking with it. It's such a clever workaround because there's no real good way of doing this in TypeScript otherwise.
Unfortunately, the LSP protocol doesn't give you much way to interact with the UI because the UI can be there or cannot be there, C and Vim or whatever. They have a pretty limited UI because they cannot show like lines or whatever. They can just show text and whatever. And so you have like to fight that to get something. And also, I don't remember if I have it here, but also like if you don't like using Mermaid, I think that let me see if I have it. Show Mermaid chart locally. Yes, you can. If you don't love the idea of like sending stuff to a Mermaid provider, you can also get the same experience locally. You just need to install a Mermaid viewer extension, and then instead of triggering like the command from the LSP, you can do that from your VS Code editor and say f8f2 show layer Mermaid locally, and it will build the same code and run that locally instead of sending you a link to Mermaid. Because I know that there are people that have rightfully some concern maybe about sending like structure of your application somewhere else. But yeah, so you get also this kind of escape hatch, and there is also like a specific LSP setting that says no external services, so do not provide me the link.
Every time Mattia shows us all of this stuff, I'm always just like, I'm like speechless the whole time, which is rare for me because I tend to talk a lot. But like every time Mattia shows us this, I'm just sitting there like flabbergasted, and it's just, I'm glad that we're doing this here today because like hopefully more folks see these things. I think once 4.0 is out and like we're in like a stable like iteration phase on 4.0, we have to do such a better job of advertising this stuff on our website. Like, I mean, there's a lot of work to do the website in general, but this stuff is like can make everybody's life so much easier.
I just also wanted to show another quick thing regarding the VS Code extension that I didn't updated my local installation because again, developing the tools usually I link them to my development folder, but I had this installation for doing a quick demo today and I forgot to update it, but I've just did it now. And it was that when you run your applications, and then you hit a breakpoint. Let's say that we hit a breakpoint in here. Okay. The effect fibers panel should, no, it won't. It didn't update it yet. I need to restart again. Well, I don't know if I will be able to show that, but yeah. I had a thing that basically you can now inside of the VS Code extension, also when you have the fiber list, you can also pick point some fibers and say interrupt this fiber. So this helps a lot when you are trying to emulate how your application will behave when you will have like interruption due to something happening. You can basically run like that again. Let me see if this time I'm lucky and it is updated. Yes, now it is updated. And now you can see that I have other things. I have information about the lifetime of a span. I have things like, again, before interruptible or not. But I can also say, I want to interrupt this fiber and see what happens. I stop that. And obviously the fiber interruption may be asynchronous, so it will not happen immediately. It will be requested. And then once you resume the execution, you will see that indeed will jump into the proper path of interruption. Now you will see that we are hitting the uninterrupt hook because we externally asked for interruption. And then we'll see that in the end also like we will eat the final point of your application. And ideally, then if I look into my output, I will indeed see, yes, errors occur because we have interrupted our application. But
Okay.
yeah, just wanted to show
Okay.
that this is really useful, because when you have things that you want like to emulate, okay, what happens if the user requests interruption here? So you can just place a breakpoint and say, now interrupt, and then you resume, and okay, now let me step the bug through what will happen when the interruption happens.
Yeah, the fact that like you can on demand interrupt a fiber, that being amazing is like one thing, but even I think it's even cool that like you can see now in the debugger what fibers are interruptible and what are not, because that information's been hidden. Like interruption in effect is notoriously one of the hardest things to debug.
Yeah.
Like even for us, like it's always the hardest problems for us to like fix. So this is pretty wild.
This is usually quite useful. It's something that I had prepared locally. I wanted like to show today. That's why I updated it before sending, because it's something really, really useful in my opinion. But yeah.
Well, now that you've shown all of that off, it's incredible. But now it's boring. What's next? What's coming next? It's all old. That's all shipped. What are the next? What's the new frontier of how will you put all that to shame?
Yeah, so yeah, it will be very difficult to put that to shame. But yeah, I have basically like 3 major things that I am basically starting to look into. I find quite difficult to work on a single task, so usually I have like a couple of tasks running concurrently. So I have 3 things. The first one is having an MCP command for the effect language service. And that will basically be an MCP server that allows you to provide the AI tools for navigating your effect codebase. Meaning things like this error named user error, where is actually defined? Or at this point of your code, which are the requirements and the errors? Those are things that, unfortunately, the standard LSP gives you some hint. The AI is usually good at inferring them, but giving a tool to the AI to navigate the code base and like seeing those will be very, very, very useful, and also try to proactively help the AI make better code. And also things like the suggestions that appears in the diagnostics can also like be reformatted in a way that we can also say the AI, okay, this is the suggestion, and also provide already like the already fixed code, so the AI in only one step sees, okay, maybe I should do that. And again, as I mentioned initially, like with dev tools, anytime you have something that you struggle with, you don't understand why, whatever, just write that down into the effect Discord, because that's the best point to see what are the common points where people struggle and whatever. The second part is making what we have already seen in VS Code editor agnostic. So I am in the process of basically extracting as services and layers all of the requirements used by the VS Code extension, make it in a way so that we will basically have a standalone desktop application. And I was working on also on seeing possibilities for a Chrome Developer Tools extension, to basically have the same features, but also like in the Chrome DevTools. So you can use the effect DevTools connected to the browser, connected to React Native, connect to whatever. And the third thing, I don't remember. I said 3, but I don't remember which was the third one. Yeah, I mentioned. I don't remember. Oh man.
Mattia's third fiber got interrupted.
Yeah. I got interrupted. My mind got interrupted. I stopped the wrong fiber. Yeah, but yeah, basically like those things, basically, right? Writing, like helping the MCP, also things like giving like the AI better tools, and also like having the tools cross-platform. Oh, the last thing was there is like an experimentation I did, which is basically the concept of a debugger proxy. Basically, a debugger proxy would be something that puts you in the middle between the actual JS engine you have on the other side and your editor, your debugger, Chrome DevTools, or whatever. This is some experimentation, so it is very possible that it will not lead to anything, but the overall idea is that have a small blocks that puts itself in the middle, and when you connect to your application, instead of connecting directly to your application, you connect to that, and that will connect to the JS engine on the other side. And the benefit would be that, given that model, we can also like provide better way for things like step debugging in a way that's connected to expense. Because the thing is that you cannot control when the debugger says, please post, you cannot say the editor, no, don't pause, I will tell you where to pause. The only way you have to do that is put yourself in the middle of the protocol and block things passing through. And so that will be one thing that I am experimented with, but again, is something that may succeed, may not. The only way to figure out, unfortunately, with DevTools usually is try and see what works or what not.
Good stuff, Mattia. This is like I said. Every time you talk about the dev tooling, I'm always just who said it in? My guests have never been so flabbered. Yeah, I'm always very impressed by the work that you're doing, and hopefully now that we have like a video like this up, people will be a lot more aware of it, because this is some great stuff.
Yeah, and that was so good, and I'm glad we can link to this. I noticed you've been recording some YouTube shorts. That's how I found out about the layer composition trick. So that's good to have too. So the Zoomers, the kids know all about it, but I usually have the YouTube shorts disabled. But for some reason, the years slipped through, and it was acceptable to me. So I know it's an hour. I don't know how much more. We had a bunch of questions come in, and obviously we focused on that one, and I think it was worth doing that. I saw Ben was calling in, but then stopped, probably because maybe he had to go. But if anyone has another question and wants to call in, please do that. In the meantime, I know there was you were answering. Oh, Ben's back. Okay, Ben. Maybe this will be our second and final caller for today. And we'll figure out what to do in the future about questions in text form, because I do feel bad about leaving those on the floor. Okay, cool. Ben, I'm check marking you now.
Hello.
Hello, Ben, again.
Hello.
Good to see you guys again.
Your books have grown.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's my room's just kind of a mess, so those are just laying around.
Book mess is the most, the most highbrow version of mess.
Figure out where to
the
put
solution
them.
is start to swap them for plants.
That's a good idea. All right, so I think some quick questions instead of doing, because I put two topics that we could discuss, and I think that the effect monorepo tooling curiosities would be the easiest one to do in the time we have left.
Yeah. How would you phrase that? Like, what are you interested in?
So I created the Beep effect repo that I'm working on. I basically copy and pasted a lot of the configurations, or at least as close to the configurations that I found in the effect monorepo that I could into my repo. And I noticed that you don't use a dedicated bundler, you use a Babel CLI, right? So you've got build annotate, build ESM, build.
Let me interrupt really quickly. Because I know that I don't know much about this area, as I'm relatively new to TypeScript, and maybe Maxwell and Mattia know more. But I know Sebastian is our master of sort of, I guess he calls himself the code janitor. He's a highly respected code janitor, and he deals with most of the tooling. But I know that the effect-small SMOL repo is the one where he has refactored and really put a lot of polish into the setup. So I'm not sure if you're looking at the primary effect repo. If you want to know our current best practices, whatever Sebastian wants us to follow from here on out, that would be in the small repo.
Yeah, I do. I have that cloned. I haven't looked
Okay.
at the. I'm assuming that you've got the same scripts in there. I'm just like, so just for that, like, is if you don't have as much experience on that, I can move to a different question. So I was just like wondering.
Oh,
what the
maybe
thought
Maxwell or
process
Mattia
is.
would. I just wanted to make sure that if you are looking at patterns, definitely make sure you look at effect small as well, just going forward, because
Okay.
you might see better patterns there, or maybe not the same challenges. But yeah, so sorry. Continue with your question.
Before
Max.
before we continue with your question, maybe I could just comment on the bundler question. So we don't bundle the library code because it's library code. Generally speaking, like there's not really a need or a good reason to bundle library code. But what we do is we use code preprocessors like Babel to inject different annotations into the code that makes sense for us. But we don't bundle because there's really no need to. It's a library, so we assume that the end user would be bundling whatever application that they put together. So I guess the distinction here is that because Effect is a library, there's no real need for us to bundle.
Yeah, I guess I maybe just use like wrong nomenclature. But like a lot of projects that are monorepos use like TS up or Vite and Webpack, and then those create the builder dist folders, which have the various like TypeScript declarations or ESM.
So yeah, those are bundlers. Those are all tools that would be used to essentially minify and like do dead code analysis and all of that sort of stuff, like for whatever JS engine you're targeting. But again, because Effect's a library, we don't have any need for bundling, so we just use TypeScript. We compile with TypeScript, and that's all we need to do.
Yeah, I do have to say it works quite nice. Like the build output is very clean.
Yeah, just keep in mind that like this is specific. It's designed for library code. Like if for app code, you do probably want to bundle. I mean, for like the back end, in many cases, I bundle the stuff I build because it just results in like faster boot like load times for like especially for Node.js, things like that. Like I think bundling, if you're building an app, bundling it generally makes sense. But like for like there's the distinction between like library code and like app code here.
Yeah, so basically I have app code and I'm using library bundler or what you guys are doing for your build, and it works fine.
Yeah, and Mike makes a really good point as well that I forgot to mention, which is that like for library code, you need the TSC compiler to emit your .d.ts files, your type declarations. Otherwise, your library won't be shipped. You won't have type declarations shipped with your library. Like if you just use a bundler, most bundlers are stripping types. They're not compiling.
I see.
Yes.
And then the other thing I'll mention about, I know Effect Small was thrown around a little bit. For Effect 4.0, codenamed Effect Small, we are removing CommonJS support from the library. We're only supporting ESM from 4.0 onward, which is what unlocked a lot of the optimizations that Sebastian has made in that library. So like, if you look in the small repo, you'll see a lot of like interesting things that we're doing now because we're only targeting ESM. So we're using a lot of like modern features of like JS tooling.
Also things like using erasable syntax only for TypeScript, which is great for development because you can just run in Node the code base and that's it, without having to use TSX or whatever.
And that won't disrupt my extensive use of namespaces.
If you're using declare namespace, that is erasable syntax because that's type only. If you're using like namespace blah blah blah, that is not type only. That gets compiled to just a plain object. So
yes.
Okay.
And generally, by the way, namespaces, even by the TypeScript team, are like basically advised against because they make it much more difficult to like do dead code analysis and like optimize bundling and things like that. So even the TypeScript team, like, they removed all namespaces from their code base, and we kind of advise against them.
I was like doing this thing where I'd like, name a namespace the same thing as a schema, and then put like type, so I could do like my schema.type, and then it would just be like the actual type. And that's like, I've like done that a lot.
Yeah.
For type, if you use like the declare namespace, like export declare namespace, that is fine because that's type only. That's erasable syntax. But TypeScript will help you catch those things if you turn on erasable syntax only.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that answers that. Yeah. So then also, I'm not, I haven't looked at the effect small repo too much, but plans on any like thoughts on like monorepo build orchestrators like Turbo Repo or NX. Is there a rhyme or reason that you don't use one of those, or?
It's just bloat for us.
Bloat.
Yeah, because for us, plain TSC with PNPM workspaces is like all we need. It's everything else beyond that is just bloat for us. In an application, I can see why Turbo Repo might be helpful, because for like all the caching and like the different steps that you have to go through and whatever, like there's this distinction between like library code and app code. For us, like we've optimized the structure of the monorepo in such a way that like just plain TSC with PNPM workspaces, number one, it's like super low overhead. We're literally just using the native tooling to do stuff. And number two, we don't really need the additional like bloat of other tools. It would just be like superfluous. There'd be no reason to do it.
Okay. And then the final one, and this can wrap me up here, is like managing, like imagine you have like, let's see, like tips for keeping like snappy or TypeScript snappy with like large layer graphs, and like is it good practice to explicitly like do like colon layer.layer,
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that in a lot of circumstances, if you are experiencing slowdowns in your code base, number one, breaking the project up into like smaller packages and turning on incremental and composite builds can help, because TypeScript just has less work to do. Two, using like annotating types, like what you were saying, like annotating explicit return types. By the way, the effect LSP has a code action to let you do that automatically.
Yeah, I saw.
I almost like forget that it's the LSP that does that. So like whenever I'm working in a code base that doesn't have the LSP, I'm like, okay, how can I just wanted to annotate the typo?
Oh, really? That's not built into the TypeScript LSP?
No.
The
It is
toggle
not.
type definition?
No.
Why? What? That's why it
there's-
disappeared sometimes. That's crazy.
So I think that there are cases where you can actually help speed up like the language server by annotating types, because TypeScript doesn't have to do all the work of inference. And Mike and Tim and maybe Mattia also would probably have other advice for speeding up.
I will try also. Sometimes, usually I didn't have really bad experience like with very slow types. I mean, it's very, very hard nowadays to get TypeScript to be very, very slow. It's usually it crashes rather than being very, very slow. But also you can try to enable, like there is a flag which is isolated modules, I think, something like that. And that basically enforce you whatever is exported inside the module to be type annotated and not like being. And this flag that usually like helps. If I recall correctly, it is called isolated modules, I think. Let me check real quick.
Yeah, and you can also try TSGo for sure. I think somebody in the chat is mentioning ratios.
Has that been proven to be pretty effective with like doesn't break any like effect code, like just switching
No,
to.
the LSP won't work with it. I don't think yet, right, Mattia? Like, does the LSP work with TSGO yet? I don't think they have all their.
No. I've spoken with someone from the TypeScript team, and right now they are still like finishing the overall architecture for the integration between like LSP external plugins and the core TSGO project, because the architecture will change overall. Right now, the LSPs are basically like a middleware that puts himself inside of the execution of the invocation that your editor does to TypeScript. And right now, all of that is inside of Node. It is all JavaScript. But after that, it will be some part done in Go, and some part will be in your editor, possibly maybe in Node or whatever else. And so that means that you have to jump from another language to another. They use an in-memory IPC to do that. And the thing is that the architecture changed overall, so they don't have a plan right now to. I mean, it's not correct to say they don't have a plan. There isn't published yet the official API for building LSP experience in TypeScript Go, because they are still finishing the proper LSP for TypeScript. Once they do that, they will look into supporting plugins for that. And also the other things to remember again is that you may see a lot of projects out there. I think OX lint, things like that. They basically like do linting or whatever. Then they use TypeScript Go as engine for the types. Beware that those are experimental, because those are basically using APIs that are not finished. So they may break one day or another.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
got
Ben.
it, Ben. Thank you for joining.
Come back soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Always will.
See you next week.
Yep.
I saw a question come in with, oh, there we go. I saw a question come in from Morgan. I'd say you called in. I don't know if you want to try that one more time. I saw you pop up and disappear. Maybe we could have one more. Hey, okay. And then, yeah, this will be the last one. I haven't seen any other calls come in. Sweet.
Hey,
Hello, Morgan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
How's it going? All right.
Nice to meet you.
Yep, the usual applause. Love what you guys are doing. But to keep this briefer, is it all right if I share a screen? I couldn't think. I feel like the question I put in the text box is barely sufficient for getting the conversation started.
Let me go. I think it got scrolled up. Could you read it or rephrase it?
So I'm trying to...
Wait, before we continue, somebody in the chat is saying that they can't hear Morgan.
Oh,
we can hear you, so maybe it's like a button we have to click. Can everybody else hear Morgan, or is it just Ratius? Everybody else can hear you, so I think it's just the one user.
There might be a button on you, Ratius. Press your buttons. Good luck. But it will be in the recording.
Okay, so the question is, I'm trying to build like maybe the closest thing to it is a version of like an RPC library. Let's say like TRPC, where I want to basically pass around an API object that has a bunch of methods on it. That those methods on an API interface, each one requires, say, some models, and I'm calling them contracts, and the contract does use services to specify these model dependencies. Now, where I've been hung up lately is everything's, working beautifully so far, but I'm stuck in that I'd like to pass in the dependency, like do some kind of, I'm thinking a callback, a callback that maps the model dependencies to each contract method, but also provide something unique, like a generic type on the model interface. So it's so say a model, like a user model, has a bunch of properties. Some of those I want to keep private. So when I provide the user service, I'd also like to snatch somewhere some additional data, like, oh, this is a limited set of properties. So on a public facing application, you're not going to be able to grab role, some other data that I would like to keep private. So if I could make this question sort of sum that things up, I'm interested in a pattern wherein I provide a service dependency, but also can grab some generic type information out of it. And I'm perfectly happy if I should, spin up a repro of some kind and pass that around in Discord.
Oh, Max, you're muted now. Or maybe Ratius can hear you only.
Yeah, Ratius muted me. I think that for me, I probably would need to see some code to help because it's a little too abstract for me to understand perfectly. I don't know if Mattia has another idea, but even putting a playgrounds together on the Effect website and sharing that would probably give us more to work with.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right, I'll board and come back with that maybe next week.
A playground,
Okay,
and
perfect.
also maybe some of the requirements you are looking into. So things like, I would like to avoid that. I would like to, because you can change a little how you model that based on what you would like to have.
Deal.
Yeah, I think that's great. Obviously, for some of the call-ins, if it's an abstract question that someone is an expert in, that's great because we could just sort of ramble on about it. Or Mattia has spent all of his life building the LSP in the mines and can just recite it for you off the top of his head.
Yeah.
But first, yes, something with code. I'm not talking to you, but then also to everyone else because I think we got a few code examples. If you can create a little, even a mini GitHub project that then I could pull it down and share it and run it, and we can all sort of edit it live and look at it a little bit beforehand. Something that a reproducer basically that we can run. That would be super great.
Deal. Sorry for wasting the last question. If this was the last question,
Not at
You've
all.
ruined it. No, there was no one else, so it's no problem anyway. And it's great to meet you, Morgan. And we'll talk to you soon.
you too.
Cheers.
Cheers. Are there any last questions? Call in now or for 1 week, hold your peace, etc. Great. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. Anything on your minds, Maxwell, Mattia, before we head into the sunset?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, that was very fun. I think we're getting a little better at this. I at least am because I have an internet connection now. So it's pretty exciting. We'll see everybody next week. Keep the questions coming. And if you want to call in, I think that's a really great scenario here set up. So let's plan on doing that mostly. Though if you really have a question that you want answered and I've been ignoring you for weeks, just DM me and say, please answer this. And I don't want to show my face on the call. So I will prepare it for you then and not leave you ignored. So bye, everybody. And see you next week. Oh, DM me on I don't know, Twitter or Discord or whatever. On Discord, there's the office hour thread. You can also just tag me. I think, will Morella get angry at you? I don't fully understand the tag rules, except that Morella, sometimes she's just a Grim Reaper and she comes in and says, no.
Don't encourage people to tag you because you'll upset me to
Okay, yes. I see. So you can DM me on Discord or whatever, or just post in that channel, and I'll be sure to notice. Write in all caps a little bit, okay? Okay. Well, bye everybody,
Bye,
and see you
everybody.
next week.
Thank you.